Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the Prop Swap app today. Prop Swap, do it now for the NCAA championship. Eagles made a couple of minor moves today. They haven't done anything.
Michael, how are you today?
Doing good, bud. And, a lot of things are happening. Boy, the Jacksonville Jags have really decided that free agency is open for business, haven't they?
Yeah. Although today, kind of quiet. I thought they'd buy another 30 players. I was starting to wonder if there was a salary cap in the NFL.
We'll keep our eye on them because they seem to be making a lot of moves. Let's see. Yesterday, Hassan Reddick, nothing today. Are you surprised that Howie Roseman hasn't been active yet? And thinking about the other players that have been signed, I get it. Hey, if they didn't do things, but there's still guys out there. But are guys starting to come off the board that you thought they'd be in play for?
A couple of guys. Look, I'm not surprised that they're not extraordinarily active. They did sign Hassan Reddick. They made it clear that pass rush was a big part of what they needed to upgrade this offseason. So they took care of that pretty quickly. It wasn't like a landmark contract. It was kind of the type of contract the Eagles have been giving out lately in free agency, which is mid-level type of contract. And then you hope you get the best of the guy. So as far as making more moves, they clearly need to do something at safety. But, there's two things in free agency, Mike. There's evaluation and there's valuation, right? Evaluation is, do we like this player? Does his skill set fit our scheme? Do we think he's good enough to play for us? Valuation is, how much do we think this player is worth? So it's my understanding, and we talked about it on the Inside the Birds pod, last week leading up, that the Eagles would look into the Marcus Williams. It's my understanding that they made an offer and were close, but at the end of the day, $70 million over 5 years, he goes to the Ravens. Right. The Ravens made a better offer. The Ravens are the type of team that shows you year in and year out that they really prioritize that position. From Ed Williams to I think they had Rod Woodson at one point, right, and Eric Weddle and Earl Thomas they brought in. So the safety is an important position for them, and now Marcus Williams. The Eagles, we know, have not always prioritized safety on big free agent spending. They've got guys like Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins before without having to really, really dig deep in the pockets. And now it sounds to me like they were competitive here, from what I understand, but just not competitive enough to lure them away from that Baltimore deal.
Right. So if I were to say to you now, knowing what's off the board, knowing what they've done, which is only really one thing, where do they kind of go from here? Or do you think they kind of sit this one out a little bit?
Well, the one thing I will appreciate about the Eagles, and I know not all fans agree with this, but I would appreciate this about any team, is that you kind of stick to your valuation and you don't panic and overspend just because you feel like you have a need. And clearly the Eagles need to get safeties under contract, but Jordan Whitehead just signed a $14.5 million 2-year contract with the Jets. That's not a lot of money. I don't know how the Eagles evaluated him, right? Clearly they probably didn't think that highly of him because it's not that much money. Maybe they believe they can bring back Rodney McLeod or Anthony Harris, and they do like Marcus Epps, and Marcus Epps has played well. So they can probably, if they don't think that Jordan Whitehead is that much different from those guys or somebody else they may have their eyes on for less money, then they're not going to go spend it just to spend it. They're going to say, we have the draft, we have Marcus Epps, we have the ability to bring back a McLeod, a Harris, somebody else on a 1-year deal, and then maybe there's still another safety like a Marcus May out there. Maybe, and this is the lone exception, there have been times where the Eagles have seen the market kind of not be there for a player that you thought it was going to be there for. In fact, that's how they got Nnamdi. Now, it didn't work for them, but at the time, everybody thought it was a great signing for not the money that you thought Nnamdi was going to get. Maybe something happens with Tyrann Mathieu, where the money for he's not signed right now. Maybe his price tag comes real low, and the Eagles swoop in there. I'm going to doubt that, but I'm going to leave that door open.
What about conversely, The amount of money that Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, ironically from the same team, got, and how that might have altered the wide receiver market for guys that they were interested in. Now, I was a little surprised DJ Chark took 1 year for $12 million, but the money that those other guys got, how that may have altered their ability or what they wanted to do at wideout.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I was talking to a team a couple of days ago that had a receiver that was ready to go test free agency, and they liked this receiver, but they also felt that the receiver was asking for a little bit too much money for what he is, right? Well, 3 or 4 days later, a lot of those wide receivers are getting the money, more money, like you just mentioned, than what they are. So now you can't blame a guy for thinking he's going to get a whole lot more than he was offered in free agency, because the money is shown to be there at wide receiver this year. So that kind of gives you an understanding into the mentality and the thinking of what goes on during free agency there. The Eagles would probably like to address wide receiver. We know they've checked in on it, but that market was so hot yesterday that any agent, I'm sure right now, for just a good to decent receiver is trying to squeeze as much money as possible. The Chark thing was interesting because it wasn't a lot of money. But he also was coming off a major injury, so that probably didn't help him.
What do you think? There is some talk that they are not interested in Juju. Does that surprise you that they wouldn't kick the tires on him?
Yeah, I mean, I was told at the beginning of the set that they had discussed him internally, that they were going to check in on it, that they did have interest. But, for example, you may have interest, and then you have a conversation, and you find out what the price tag is, and then all of a sudden you don't have interest, because that's where your valuation doesn't match your evaluation.
Right.
So at one time they had interest. Maybe it is no longer there, and maybe that has to do with the price tag. I don't know.
Talk with Geoff Mosher, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. Obviously, they make the move yesterday, and they haven't done much today, but they did do some house cleaning inside. So let's kind of get your breakdown. Alex Singleton, non-tendered. He's their leading tackler the last 2 years. Are they ready to move on, or they want to bring him back at a lower number?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that they could bring him back at a lower number. They just were not going to tender him at close to $2.5 million, when right now he's your third line. If you're talking about inside linebacker, off the ball linebacker, he's number 3 behind Edwards and behind Davion Taylor. And, I would think that they're going to try to upgrade that position in the draft, and maybe even sign, in May or June, a 1-year guy also. So, I mean, there's no reason to spend $2.5 million on someone that you don't have in your top 3, most likely on the depth chart.
All right. The other guy they did not tender is Boston Scott. And I guess same thought. Well, maybe a little different thought is, I think what they did gives you the message of the way they think. They don't value linebacker. If we can get you cheaper, we'll get you cheaper. If not, see you later. Running back, we don't value you. If we can get you cheaper, we'll get you cheaper. We're not paying you $2.5 million to play that position.
Right. And I did hear at the Combine that Boston Scott, he's kind of, he's happy with what he's done here as a versatile backup.
But you can make an argument that they haven't given him enough opportunity.
Well, sure. And he would like to get more opportunity. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles said, we'll let you go out there and we'll bring you back at something less than your rate. But he tried hard to find a place where he could be a definitive number 3 running back, if not number 2.
Right. He seems like a guy who feels like I could probably get more snaps someplace else on the free agent market. Now, the guys they did bring back, I found Herbig makes sense. They value that position for $2.5 million. He plays both guard and can play center. We want you back.
Well, this is interesting because it's just the right of first refusal tender, which means technically any team can sign him to an offer, and the Eagles have the chance to match it. But what are the odds the Eagles are going to match a pretty good offer for a backup offensive lineman if he gets anything close to starting offensive lineman money? So there's an opportunity here for Herbig in a league that's always looking for just average offensive linemen, right? Let alone good ones, to maybe audition himself and see if the league views his tape as pretty good. We all view his tape as pretty good, right? I mean, we think that Jeff Stoutland has done an excellent job with him. He fires a snap over the head of the quarterback, but in general, when he goes in, whether it's center or guard, he holds himself up pretty well. So we'll have to see if the league agrees with that opinion or thinks that maybe it's just the kind of looks that way because he's playing around a lot of good talent and has great coaching.
That's interesting. So they extend a right of first refusal tender to him, which means somebody can offer him. Now, what do they have to offer him? They can offer him 5 years, $15 million if they want.
Right. And if the Eagles don't match it, they don't get any draft compensation in return. Where the other tenders, you have the ability to get certain draft
interesting. Okay,
yeah.
So I mean, if you're another team that really struggles with offensive line, wouldn't you just make them an offer just to make them have to match that?
Oh, God. If you're the Giants, and
right.
I know the Giants have already made – first of all, if you're the Giants, I joke about this on the Inside the Birds podcast, but I'm also half serious. You probably should make a run at Boston Scott just so he stops killing you every year.
Yeah.
Right?
Good one. That's a good point.
Yeah. And then, you always have to deal with Saquon's injuries, and I think that they don't have their backup running back from last year anymore, whose name the Booker. I think they cut him. So anyway, but yeah, if you're the Giants,
that
Cowboys,
makes a lot of sense.
You're Washington, right? You just lost Brandon Scherf.
Yep.
You want, make him an offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Herbig is, he's for the money for $2 million. He could be a low level starter for 16 games, and you're okay there. He's not going to kill you. In other words.
Yeah. Make the Eagles match the contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make them occupy the cap space.
Absolutely, no question there. Greg Ward, what's the story there? Because, I mean, it just seems that they have no role for him whatsoever.
Yeah, well, no role for him at the price that the restricted free agent tag would. Again, it's kind of like the same thing. Could they bring him back? Probably say, hey, we'll bring you back. We'll wink, nah. We're not going to pay you $2.5 million to be a fourth or fifth receiver, but we'll guarantee you $1 million or $1.1 million. And if he doesn't get that offer from somebody else, he just comes, he just signs back with the Eagles and does that.
Wish somebody would guarantee me $1 million to do nothing.
I wish as well, Mike. I would actually even do a little bit for $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, you could even get me to keep doing as little as I'm doing right now for $1 million, right?
Exactly.
And then Andre Chachere is the other guy who's just kind of a special teamer, right?
Yeah, but you know what? He's a good find. I mean, he's a guy who became a gunner on special teams, and I thought did a really good job in that role. For a guy who was kind of just signed off the street one day. I like him. I think he's a good special teamer. You need those core special teamers, and he stands out on special teams. So those are good types of guys to have.
All right, so we got all that kind of stuff is kind of the housekeeping that's going on right now for the Eagles in terms of all the restricted free agents. We talked how about Jason Kelce last night belting out? Did you know that he was a singer?
I did not know he was. I still wouldn't call him a singer after that, but I guess he held his own.
Right. For those of you who don't know, Kelce sung the national anthem last night at the Sixers game.
Yeah. By the way, Mike, real quick, I think Greg Ward did sign a 1-year deal, so I think that already happened. He basically signed back with the Eagles for probably less than what the tender, but probably
he re-signed a 1-year deal. Chachere is an exclusive rights free agent, which means he can only sign.
Right, so he got his deal done as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ward was a restricted, but he took a 1-year deal for less than the low tender is how I kind of read it. Mm-hmm.
Sure, less than the low tender and probably more than he might have gotten from somebody else.
So that goes back to what's left on the housekeeping thing here. We're hearing a lot about Deshaun Watson. He's meeting with a bunch of teams. The Eagles have not been listed as one. But does somehow, some way, Roseman find out what they're asking for?
Oh, I have a feeling that he's made enough calls and has an idea. I mean, obviously it comes down to Deshaun Watson.
Right. I was going to say, is it becoming evident then to them that he just doesn't have any interest in playing for them?
Well, I think what's maybe interesting is that it seemed like Carolina was hot. And that was the team, and then you heard New Orleans as well. And they want to
get the whole NFC South.
Yeah, you know they want to get this done before Sunday's deadline for a lot of his money to become vested. So you're running out of time here. If it was so slam dunk Carolina or New Orleans, you wonder why hasn't happened yet. And then all of a sudden Atlanta's in on it, and you wonder if that means that Deshaun is now open to more teams. Would Philly get back in on it if they have the best package? Again, there's no smoke right there right now, but I never slam the door until the deal is done.
Well, especially with them. Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if you are Houston, I guess Indianapolis was interested, and they weren't interested in talking to Indianapolis because they don't want to trade them in the division. So you would think an NFC team has a better shot.
You would absolutely think that. Yes.
What do you think of this Randy Gregory situation?
Oh, I think about Frank Gore. With the time he was going to be an Eagle and wasn't. I think about Anthony Barr, the time he was going to be a Jet and wasn't.
Okay, but this goes back to the conversation. I think you and I yesterday? No, I think it was Jeff, the other Jeff. So you follow the Honest NFL on Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay, the remark that he made about how poorly Dallas is run, like they're the worst run organization when it comes to planning for free agency. Like they have no plan. They are just absolutely flying by the seat of their pants. And how about this happens the day after that tweet comes out where they can't even get this right. I mean, they announced the deal. Schefter tweets it out, and 5 minutes later he takes the same exact deal to go to Denver.
I know. And apparently the word is that they tried to train at the last minute. They tried to change some language in the contract for protections because the guy has had some off-field issues, and then bam. Now, if you're Jerry Jones and you're the Cowboys or you're a Cowboys fan, I don't know how you're not haunted by the memories of, it's not too long ago, maybe less than 10 years ago, when DeMarcus Ware had to become a cap casualty because they didn't know how to handle their books. And then he went to Denver and he won a Super Bowl there. So not that Randy Gregory is DeMarcus Ware, but he's pretty good when he's healthy.
Yeah, and it's funny because I tweeted, the deal gets announced, and I'm like, wow, 5 years, $70 million, $28 million in guarantee, Adam Schefter. I tweeted, I like the deal, but he'll never play 5 years without something coming up. Solid player, but too much money to trust him with. So that tweet comes out about Dallas, and then he's in Denver by the time I hit send almost. Like, what happened here? So just an epic fail by them, though, right?
Yeah. Plus, an astute friend of mine observed that, maybe Denver may not be the ideal destination given some of his past transgressions and what goes on in Denver. So what's legal now in Denver? So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I was saying that to Josh. I said that to Josh. He got an offer to go smoke more weed, and he was out, man. Decided that Denver.
If the NFL didn't care, it would be fine. But
Perfect.
the NFL, they care.
All right. You got any interest in Jarvis Landry, by the way?
I don't know that I want a full-time slot receiver for the Eagles because that doesn't really help you get Devontae Smith off the X position. I mean, not that I think Devontae can't play the X, but I think he's better as a movable part, maybe a Z. And putting Jarvis at slot kind of limits what you do with your other guys, but he is pretty damn good. Yeah. So you could do a lot worse, and he'd probably help your offense. So I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah. All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. Check out the latest Inside the Birds podcast, and you can get that wherever you listen to your podcast. That's on Apple, Google, Spotify, all the platforms. And all right, well, we'll keep by the way, Fletcher Cox, what's going on there? That's the other thing I had on my list here.
Nothing I've heard lately.
Nothing?
Look, the addition of Hassan Reddick, I think you have to answer a question here. I'm going to assume that Jonathan Gannon still plans to be a modest blitzer, if that, like really go with a 4-man rush. And I'm going to assume Hassan Reddick is going to be on the field to rush the passer, right? I'm going to assume that Derek Barnett's on the field to rush the passer. I'm not Derek Barnett. I'm sorry, Josh Sweat. So you got Sweat, you got Reddick, you have Brandon Graham. Now, where does he play once he's ready to? He's moved inside before. He used to do that Super Bowl year, 2018, good at it. So you can do that in the nickel, right? And you have Javon Hargrave. That's your 4-man rush right there.
And Milton Williams.
And we didn't.
Not that I'm
Fletcher
putting
Cox.
Milton Williams ahead of Fletcher Cox, but I'm imagining
I'm just saying
they
you
like
got
him.
You got 6 guys for a 4-man rush, a predominant 4-man rush, and a couple of guys are not leaving the field, and that's Reddick and that's Hargrave, and you would like Sweat on the field as well. That's 3 right there. So it kind of casts in doubt what they do with Fletcher Cox, unless they just feel like Brandon Graham's just not going to be ready until halfway through the year. I don't know. I have no idea about that. I don't have any reason to believe that either. But my point is, if you're predominantly
he got hurt in week 2.
Rush team, what's that?
He got hurt in week 2.
Right, he should be fine,
Yeah.
but you never know. It's an Achilles for a guy who's over 32. So I'm just saying it's a predominantly 4-man rush team, but you got 6 guys right now who can in some form or fashion rush the passer. So you're paying Fletcher Cox a lot of money. If he's on the team, he's going to be rushing the passer.
Yeah,
right?
what's the deal with his June 1st, and if he got traded, what's all that deal?
Well, yeah, the post June 1st designation on a release or a trade allows you to split the cap hit that you would ordinarily take. Like if you did it now, you would take it in this year. Now, the post June 1st, you can do it this year and next year. So you split it up. So you reduce kind of the cap hit that you're taking both this year. So that's why any move involving Fletcher would likely come after June 2nd. You can do it now, Mike, but you still carry that accelerated dead cap charge. And then once June 1st comes or June 2nd comes, then all of a sudden, like your money magically disappears there because you designated him.
So what's the best avenue if they were interested in trading, or they want to trade? What's the best avenue for that?
The best avenue would be to trade him if they get a good offer. I mean, I would keep him if I don't get a good offer. I mean,
like you could trade him on draft day, right? And what's the cap hit if you trade him on draft day?
You take the full cap hit, but if you designate it post June 1st, then as soon as June 2nd rolls along, you free up that money.
Gotcha. So you could trade him at the draft and then designate the trade as a post June 1st.
Correct.
And then the money would be separated.
Right.
Got it. All right.
So all of a sudden you're looking at June and you got a little bit more money than you had the day before.
Right.
And maybe if there's, you can do something like extension or sign a free agent who's still out there. I mean, it's not going to make a big deal for the Eagles in the long run.
All right. There you go. Inside the Birds, Geoff Mosher. Football at 4 tomorrow. Adam Kaplan is here. We're off on Thursday and Friday for the NCAA tournament. So our final edition of Football at 4. And, of course, you know what will happen. All the big signings on Thursday and Friday.
Oh, yeah. Trade for Deshaun Watson, trade for Christian McCaffrey. It's going to go crazy.
Christian
McCaffrey?
Whoa. Did you just add something that we should have talked about?
No, I'm just messing around.
All right, Geoff Mosher, everybody. Thanks, pal.
Take care, man.
That's Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast. I'm Mike Gill.